Hey everybody, I hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is who. Who. And I'm not trying to be an owl. But we are looking at this week, looking at Job's questions. This week we're going to look at basically the final things that he says in his arguments with his companions or his friends, those who are trying to comfort him. And so this week we'll look all the way through chapter 31. So we're going to start in 26. You can look back and read chapter 25 to see what Bildad says, but then be following along this week to see Job's kind of his final response. At the end of chapter 31, it says the words of Job are concluded. And so, as looking ahead, now Job is going to respond to God, but this is his final words, his arguments before that time. And so, as we've been going through this, I pray that you can see the same arguments that maybe we have and same questions that we have at times in our lives. And so this week we're going to look at those questions: who, what, where, when, and why. So today we're going to look at who. Now in chapter 25, Bildad gives I think it's like 6 verses, and he gives a very short response and basically talks about the power of God and the purity of all those who have to stand before him. And Job basically, this is the way he responds at the first part of Job chapter 26. He says, but Job answered and said, how have you helped him who is without power? How have you saved the arm that has no strength? How have you counseled one who has no wisdom? And how have you declared sound advice to many? To whom have you uttered words, and whose spirit came from you? In other words, this whole time, Job has been begging and pleading for God to speak. And he was ready even for God to speak to him through other people. And I wonder how often, just even to pause there for a moment, I wonder how often we are ready and prepared and willing to hear God speak through others. Job's argument here is, Bildad, you're not helping me. You're telling me the exact same thing that I already know, the exact same things really that I've already said, maybe just from a different vantage point, because remember, all his friends just assumed and continued to declare that Job was guilty, and Job maintained his innocence. Now, Job's attitude, and we really won't get into until next week, but his attitude is kind of shifted to focusing more on what he's done right rather than who God is. But even in his questions this week, he still realizes that God is more powerful. God is more pure. He's more holy than we could ever hope to be. And so he says, Bildad, that didn't help. So I don't know about you, but sometimes, I mean, we come to God, we come praying, and we're hoping that he's going to speak through someone else. But sometimes people claim to be giving us all this knowledge, and all they're doing is telling us the same things that we already know. The point is this: Bildad and friends were claiming to have this this secret knack of having the wisdom that came directly from God. And he says, no, you're not telling me anything new. I wanted God to speak. So with that, I think it'll be some encouragement for you and I as comforters when we're trying to comfort others, that we don't give them our advice. We give them the word of God. And we've talked about this some in previous weeks. But I still wonder what Job was thinking. He says, yes, I understand. To go back to what Bildad said in chapter 25, he's talking about those who needed to be pure. That even, I mean, have you ever stopped to think about it, that even the angels who were in the presence of God, that they still fail? And those a third of the angels went with Satan, and to think that if even those that were that close to God, if they still couldn't live up to it, he said, then what chance do we have here? And that's a question, and I think a lot this week is going to stir up even more questions in our lives. And so don't look to me to give you that answer, right? Because we need to look to the Lord to give us the answer. And at the heart of it, that's what Job was desiring. He wasn't desiring a word from his friends. He was desiring a word through his friends. But he wanted the word to originate with God. And if we want to get answers, if we want to understand what's going on in the midst of our suffering, in the midst of our trials, in the midst of those times where we feel all alone, we don't need a word from a friend. We need a word from God. Now, it may come through a friend. It may come through an enemy. It may come through a pastor. It may come through somebody you hadn't spoken to in a very long time. It may come through somebody that you speak to every day. And one of my personal favorites, it may come through the mouth of a child. But regardless, we don't need what their opinions are. We don't need what their assessment of the situation is. We need a word from God. So what will you be seeking today? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.